You can watch it later as well. Okay, got it. Thanks, Craig. I'd like to hand over now to Craig to talk about upcoming events. So things that are happening in the Agile world.
Yeah, thanks, John. And also, I guess, want to shout out to our other sponsor, the Agile Alliance, who also support the meetup as well. So, I guess, speaking of the Agile Alliance, if you haven't checked out the Agile Alliance website, agilealliance.org, there's always events happening there and lots of great resources and things as well. Their main conference, which is the Agile 2022 conference. If you're looking to finally get onto a plane and head out to Nashville in the US in July, I have been to many of those conferences in the US, and they are a great opportunity to network and good opportunity to map and put that around a holiday or something like that. So tickets are available for that as well. And there's other actually really cool stuff. I was just looking when I was just trying to find the dates there, because that's in July. They've been having this series of events called Game On, which are about agile games and things like that. So worth checking those out as well. So check that out, agilealliance.org. The only other thing that's I know things are ramping up around some of the other conferences around the place. For example, last conference has a lot of online sessions. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out the last conference. Not sure whether they're planning to run one in person this year. Mike, have you heard anything about that in your networks? Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. So check that out. And of course, we just talked about the Lean Coffee, which is next Friday in person at the Espresso Emporium in Brisbane City. So if you haven't experienced a Lean Coffee before and you happen to be in the city area, they're an awesome thing to get along to. So that's all I'm aware of in the conference and event stakes at the moment, John.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig. So now, for the bit that you've all been waiting for, I'd like to introduce Mike Burns. So Mike is not an unknown quantity in the Brisbane Agile circles. In fact, Mike has been involved in the community for a number of years and is one of the thought leaders. So we are very, very lucky to have him. He's worked also in London as well, and worked with some of the largest and smallest companies in both Brisbane and in London. So really fantastic to have you here, Mike. I know that you've also spoken at a number of conferences, so I think we're in for a treat today. So welcome to Mike.
Awesome, thank you so much for that. Yeah, it's been a while since I've spoken at a Agile meetup, so thank you for having me back. It's always good, and there's lots of new faces around, so yeah, awesome for you all coming out today. We'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay respects to the elders past and present. And also a big shout out to the Irish, because it is St. Paddy's Day today. So hence my background, and you'll see soon my presentation. All right, so let me get straight into it. And all right, everyone see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Yep,
awesome.
Yep.
Alrighty, so yeah, so great little intro from John there around what some people's thoughts are on personas and how they're already being used. So they are used in lots of different places already. So what I was trying to do with this talk was really think about them a bit more deeply than I had previously. And when I was doing that, I thought, you know, a lot of the documents that we read about personas and guidance that we see is very, maybe not focused at the right spot. So that's why I thought that Agile personas they're a bit different. So let me start. Oh, there's my little beard shaking. Took me a little while. All right, so everyone knows our user story format. We've got ASA, I want so that. And that as a persona, that's 33% of our user story dedicated to personas. I don't think that we could say many people really spend 33% of their work dedicated to looking into personas and spending their time actually getting to know their customer as much as they could. There's definitely roles that probably do. Product owner is a good one. BA probably does a lot of that stuff, but yeah, not every role is doing it. And yet our story template, our user story template says a third of that should be dedicated to looking at our persona. So what are personas? So got some little snippets here, but representing the real people. And Susie gave a really great anecdote there before around a persona of 50 to 70, over $5 million portfolio, evil, does this with his hands, that sort of persona. And so representing real people is a really good idea. They also segment those users, so we start to put them into boxes, I guess. The next bit there, personas should be developed from real data, derived from actual people. So I think it was Young who was talking about the cardboard cutouts of real people and talking to those, and that's really awesome. I haven't heard of that one before, but I don't know how well that scales when you're working on a massive online forum or something where you have thousands of people. You can have a lot of cutouts. But the last bit there, you're making personas believable. And I think that's probably the hardest part that I find with personas, that they become either they're too generic and they aren't meaningful at all, or there's not often do we see these ones that are very specific, but the cardboard cutout idea, that's really specific. That's exactly one person, but yeah, that doesn't scale. So I started thinking a lot about this stuff, and we've all seen these personas, and if you were expecting that I was going to tell you how to do a persona tonight, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to do that. There's lots of stuff out there already that will tell you how to do that. What I hope to do is make you think about it a bit different way. So you would have seen these types of personas, as the picture has a name, has their year, what they do, and there's a bit of a story behind it. This one has their values, their motivation and goals and frustrations. It's all really good stuff. You can have really simple ones. This one's almost like a sign-up sheet. There's ones here for students that have their what tasks they do, primary tasks and stuff like that. This one, what are their online behaviors? A little quote from them, keywords and stuff. This one is from a marketing, so it looks at the journey for information down the bottom there. So, we end up using these in things like customer journeys. And then the last one here is actually a persona based on job description, on a position description. So using them as part of a transformation, it was looking at what are the personas that we need to do, and then looking at role definitions as well. So there's lots of different examples out there. Is any one of them right? I can't tell you that, because it's that perfect coaching answer of it depends. And I think that's really key. It really does depend on who you're working with and what information you need. Often, this is an interesting example where we're combining those two personas into a bit of it's almost like that customer journey, but we can see how they interact with each other. So we can extend the use of them just through that persona and see how they interact, which we don't often look at. All right, so there's at the top level, I guess, what that persona is trying to talk about is that shared mental model, so that we can talk to each other and know who we're talking about, and we all have the same picture in our head. Not like the people in this picture down the bottom who have totally different ideas of who that person is. So really looking at yeah, how do we have a common idea of who this person is? So that shared language that we're creating, and especially between business teams and developers, that's really the big key there, because developers do speak a different language. I can say that because I am a developer, so I know that we speak a different language. And Anderson here's got two really good points underneath that. So it requires the development team to step out of the technical worldview. So I like that one, stepping out and getting into the mind of someone else and thinking about the software from the perspective of the user. So that's all the ideas of the persona. Common elements, and you would have all seen these as the photo, the name, the skills, description, problems, pain points, quotes, whatever makes sense to you. So yeah, as I said, I'm not going to give you any prescription here on what is going to make a good persona, because it's going to be up to you, whatever makes sense for you. Where they've come from is really from marketing and from advertising. So this is in the 20s. Hopkins here is saying, you know, we're using personas to use that user segmentation, and it's really about advertising. So Alan Cooper, who wrote the Inmates Are Running the Asylum in the late 90s, he is sort of touted as the inventor of personas in agility, I guess. And he, as a software developer during the 80s, he said that he was a dumb developer and needed practice remembering who he was building software for. And that's why he got those personas involved. Really good book if you're not aware of that one, Inmates Are Running the Asylum. It's a good product sort of book. And there's research around this as well. 20% productivity improvement in teams that use personas. So that there is actual evidence and research to say that, you know, using personas, you will get more productive. So cool. Some use cases for customer insights. Obviously, that one is a bit of a given. You're gonna get to know your customer data a lot better. The next one I really like here: creation activities. Using personas to information to create better products for everyone in the organization dealing with customer data. So they're actually there for you to use as part of your creation. It's not just something that we write in the first line of that user story. It's something that we should be using all the time. And that's where that communication comes in as well. So for us to communicate between the different departments, between business and technology, or whatever it needs to be. All right, so yeah, that middle one is where I was sort of going with this talk. When you start doing it, often you go, how many personas should we have? And Melissa Ferry, she does a great course on product management, and you know, she along with many other people say about 4 to 5 is really good. And if depending on the size of your product, but 4 to 5, you're probably pretty good. And she does go on to say that create enough personas to keep real people in mind and concentrate on those people's goals. So, but 4 to 5 seems to be the number. So I was really thinking about this and going 4 to 5. That's usually what I see at companies that I've been at. You have 4 to 5, and they come out of the marketing department, and they're all pretty flash. But those views are really more of a product owner view or a marketing view. It's not that three amigos view that we need when we get people actually being creative and doing those creative activities. So I think we actually need more personas and invest that 33% of our effort into them, because that's what we signed up to when we got that card and we started having the conversation around it. So I think one thing that happens as a product grows is you will get more users. The number of users increases. So early on, you're going to have a few, and the abilities change as well. So there's early on, beginning, their usage of the system is low. As that customer base increases, you get a few more people who are a bit better at the system, and you might even get experts. And obviously, along the way, there's new features that are being added in as well. So it would stand to reason that new personas would have to be emerging from that, because there's new different skills and new different ways that people are using the system, and the number of people are growing as well. So thinking about where the product is in its life cycle and understanding where your feature set is as well can influence the number of personas that you might have. So really, thinking about the whole ecosystem. So this has come from marketing, and marketers use personas really well because it helps them hit a larger segment of customers with a specific message. And they do that based on lots of things: demographic, geographic, psychographic, and behavior. And a lot of these things you'll pull into your personas, but I think they actually become so generic that they're not as useful as they could be. And some of the other criticism you get is at expiration of them, that they, we did it at the beginning of the project, or we did it at the when we started the application, and now it's been 5 years and we're still using the same personas. The high cost of them is a big consideration, because it does, if you're investing a lot of time in them, but they're going to expire, what's the trade-off there? Lack of scalability, the cutouts is a really good idea around that one. So the scalability of it, how do we get bigger populations, especially during that product life cycle? And non-representative data. So, that the 50 to 70-year-old with the $5 million portfolio, is that actually represented? What data have we got to show that? I think, Susie, you did say that they had a lot of data, so that's awesome that it was actually data-driven. And that's sort of the point, that it should be data-driven. So what do we do instead? And this is what happens so often, is we make them up. And to me, that just doesn't seem right. Because making them up, you might get us started and we might be able to hit some of the mark. And again, I guess it probably depends on where your product is. If you're in a startup and you don't know what your market is, then making it up might be really good. But doing some research is probably a better way of actually figuring out what those personas are. So we don't make them up. And in Cooper's book, the Inmates Asylum book, it says we discover them as a byproduct of that investigation process. So they're actually something that we need to continually refine, and like other things in agility, we increment and we iterate on it, and we continue to grow it. There's this idea around when you start researching personas of the elastic user. And that's really when we have that generic user that is able to do all the things. So, we end up writing our stories as a user I want, because that user is awesome. They can do anything we want. They're going to wiggle and bend and stretch into all the different functions that we need them to do. And when we start working for the elastic user, we're not really going to be hitting the true goals of what that the real people behind that persona are after. So we need to know what the persona's goals are so we can really hit them. And the last point here is really interesting as well. So thinking about our negative personas, who are the people we're not designing for? It's something that you probably won't see in a marketing persona deck. They're not going to be spending a lot of time on the people that they don't want. But when we're working with the system, perhaps there is negative personas that we might want to think about. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind, thinking, when we're, same as when we're doing test cases, we're doing positive and negative test cases. Let's have a think about what's our negative persona as well. So how do we overcome this elastic user? So when we start thinking about the user, just the user, it causes trouble. So we need to design the software that will bend and stretch and adapt to the user's need, not the other way around. We don't want the user having to bend. We want the software to bend and be able to flex to their needs. So, making it customizable, making it to fit in with their goals, not the other way around. All right. So data-driven personas, this is an actual thing. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's been over for the last 15 years or so. It's been really growing. And when it started off in its first few years, it was very, very light. But over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of investment in this, not only in research capacity, but also in commercial. So there's ideas around AI created personas, big data driven, even voice personas and 3D personas, and really thinking outside the box. If anyone's interested, you can also look at that automatic persona generation, which is a bit of a research project that goes off to a lot of social media sites, and you can sort of put in parameters, and it'll give you a whole bunch of personas that are based on real data around people, and even give you the little pictures and all their little bios and stuff as well. So yeah, pretty cool little project. Is that questions coming through? I don't know if I can't see that bit when I'm presenting. Am I missing anything there, John? No.
Sorry, I was just finding the unmute button. Mike, no, I think a couple of people are coming in a bit late because we normally have our session at 7 o'clock. So what's happened is we moved it a bit earlier. So I think some of the people are still coming in at the original time.
Cool. Welcome, new people. Hello. All right, so TDD is a really good technique, and we're looking more at that. Hopefully you're looking at that with your teams, and it states that before writing any code, you write your tests in its simplest form. There's a lot more to it, and we could do another talk on that one day if you like. But writing your tests, before you write the code. Persona-driven development says before writing tests, write the personas to represent real people that you've talked to who need your product. So really shifting left on personas as well, and pushing as much thinking into our personas way before we do any work, and getting to know them, and rather than just that single line that we skip over. Right, so this is when I started actually taking all that theory and putting it into some practice, and this is hopefully the meaty bit for you guys. So that marketing view is very valuable. Don't get me wrong. There is a lot of value in all that stuff, and the product owner top level view where we see, that we have the supplier user, the staff user, the policy holder. This is very, very much a insurance-based example. I was working with an insurer at the time. So that's really valuable stuff, but I do think we need more. We need another layer down. So when we drill down, we can go to that supplier and look at, there's actually 2 types of suppliers here. So what type of supplier are we talking about? And they also have different goals and motivations, and then the auto repairer's goals may be very different to the roadside assistant driver's goals. So when we can talk about when they come up to that supplier view, are we focused on the right goals? Same when we look at the staff member, there's actually multiple layers here. We start drilling down right down into different layers. We might go 3 or 4 or 5 levels down here, and all those different goals. So rather than our user story saying as a staff member, we can start saying, as a complaints agent. And there's a little bit of a hierarchy that we can create as well that might allow us to inherit some of those traits along the way, so we don't have to we don't have to go over the same details over and over again. We can sort of say, oh, it inherits from that call center agent, so it has these traits. And keep going down into the policy even. This goes down and we can get down to the last bit of like this motorcycle commuter right down the bottom here, who is very specific around what they're after. So we can write our stories there. So already we've got a much richer idea of who our users are and where they fit with other users as well. So what I think is important here is it's not just a hierarchy, or it needs to be more than a hierarchy. There needs to be relationships here, because that one person, a renter, might have relationships with not only a unit owner but a home owner, depending on who they are. You can split it out, I guess, into two different personas, and that might be good as well. But really thinking about how do all these fit in the environment that we're working with. So the next logical step for me was to take these groups and start creating persona sets. And these persona sets might be used by different divisions within the company, but they all have their relationships between them, and understanding those relationships and using that as a communication tool to talk between different areas. So our online apps might have a squad that works just with new claim apps. So they're going to have their own personas, but they fit into the bigger set. It's really understanding the whole enterprise worth of personas that we have, every team's view on what personas they are, and start getting some reuse and start sharing stuff between those teams, and really getting an understanding of where all those persona sets live and the relationships between them. The next layer that we put on this is our types of personas. And some of you may have seen this before, but there's 4 levels of personas. So the primary user, they directly interact with the solution. So that's often your end users. And the secondary personas are the ones that can support. So your help desk might be in there. People who are helping those end users, they might need some special tools. The tertiary users are the ones that get results. So, is there any reporting or anything that's done that from those end users that other people are using, the data that is created by those people, used by someone else? And then the facilitators, who they might be down the line, they also might get some data around it, but it might be a different type of data. So usage data and even error logs and stuff like that. So what I often do is when thinking about personas at an epic level or a feature level, depending on your flavor of agility, is going through each of these persona types and saying, do we have each of these? Most times, like 90% of the time, every epic I have is going to have one of each of these. And it's a bit of a talking point to go, do we have a primary one? Yeah, that's one. That one's obvious. Who are the secondary, tertiary, and facilitator users as well? Who are those personas? And getting all those, you can even start to create a bit of a matrix then, and you'll find your stories become really easy when you have even your goals and what they want to achieve. And then across the top, you might have your different personas and where they intersect. That's probably a user story. So it can give you some rough ballpark figure of how many user stories you might be looking at really early on, quite easily. So so this is that example here. So we've got our acceptance criteria at an epic level, and even benefits you can put in here as well. So if we've gone, it's going to have all these personas because it's solving a problem for this person. If that person doesn't actually have any acceptance criteria, they're not actually accepting anything, or they don't benefit from it, are they actually a persona that we need to worry about here? So validating really early on, do we have the right personas? Are they the right thing for this epic or for this piece of work? Take it up to the next level. Okay. So this is where I started getting really interested, because I am a developer and I love a good automated test and some BDD. So I looked at those personas and I thought, okay, how can I use this now? What am I actually going to use with this? So I wrote a feature and it's got our user story at the top there. As a motorcycle commuter, I want to purchase a new policy so that I'm insured, take out if any damage to my bike. One scenario that we've got is that I have my details handy and blah, blah, blah. You can read it on the screen. But the examples there, we have Bob who fits into that persona. That's the example that we want to use. And obviously we can put a few more example bits in there so that we know what policy he's got and all those sort of things, cut down for example's sake. So I went, okay, really, that's looking good. I've got my example and I've got my persona there. How does that help me test that persona? If you've done anything around testing or TQB, you may have heard of Pesticide Paradox. So this is when the same data and test is repeated, or when the same test data is reused over and over and over. What happens is that we start to not find any new defects because we're using the same stuff over and over and over. And those tests become a bit not as useful as they could. And your product that becomes resistant to test code. It doesn't mean that there's no defects there. We're just not catching any new ones. So really understanding that, we've got to change that test data up a little bit to find new defects. So how do these things fit together? What I was looking at was, for this one persona, there's a whole bunch of data that I can write behind that and start creating a database of users that have persona attributes in them. So they have a login, they have policy names, ages, all this stuff. You can create that and it becomes this known set of test data. And it's really specific to where they sit in that relationship model for that persona. So we go up here, we can sort of see, oh, it's a commuter, but he's a motorcycle insurance policy holder, policy holder. But now when I look at taking this archetype of persona here and actually getting an instance of it, it becomes richer again. So I don't know if anyone's used Catalan before. Catalan is a pretty easy to use testing suite. When you first get it, it has all the bells and whistles, and they suck you in a bit with that, and then you have to pay for the license, but you can still do heaps of really cool stuff even without getting a license. What I really like about it, there's a few things. It's Groovy based. So if you're working with teams that are doing Java, then they can help you out because Groovy and Java are pretty much the same thing. But it allows you to sort things out quite nicely, and it's all Git enabled, and have all your source control and all that stuff as well, which is cool from a testing point of view. So what I was able to do here was get my feature, create that. I've copied it in there. I've got my example and I've got my feature. So that sits in the software quite nicely. Then the next bit is we have this code behind idea. So wherever those steps are, we have some groovy code that runs. So I won't go into the details here, but basically all this is doing is saying, given I have my details handy, what I want to do is just call off to another test case that is called I have my details handy. That's what we're doing. It's really quite simple coding. once you know the pattern, anyone can copy and paste that. Catalan has the ability to import Excel data and also attach to database files and get data from everywhere. But for ease, we've just got an Excel spreadsheet. And when we load that up, it has all, we can put all our data in here. Again, it can be source controlled, so we can add to it over time and can get more data, helping us get rid of that pesticide paradox. Sorry. A test suite allows us to iterate through all that data. So for every test we have, we can run it for every persona. You can see where I'm going with this. We can have lots and lots of personas, right? Pass through all the variables once we've loaded them in. And then the last bit is our steps. And the steps are really easy to do in Catalan. It's a lot of point and click stuff, or you can get into the code and find it as well. And it has plugins and lots of stuff. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to. I'm not trying to sell you on Catalan, but what I am trying to show you is that by having this idea of iterating through a single test, a single scenario with lots of different personas that we can add to over time and continually grow, is going to remove that idea of stale data. And the more that we put in there, the richer that persona is going to be. We can get even more ideas of, oh yeah, not only is it Bob, who did I say? Oops. Yeah, not only is it Bob who's 21, but this persona could also be Tom who's 62. Cool, okay, so I'm getting an idea. I have more idea of who these people are. And the more examples I have in there, the richer and richer that persona becomes. Maybe we can start even then thinking, well, actually this persona is probably too generic. Maybe we need a young person one, a middle-aged person, and we can start then breaking that persona up even more and getting richer and richer all the time. But yeah, thinking about how we use them from our user story, that one line as a persona, all the way through to how we test with them, and all the way along creating richer and richer personas. So they need to be really useful. And I think that's where we can use them through the whole life cycle of the card and through the life cycle of the product, makes them more useful and memorable, because we are using them all the time. If they're not doing that, get rid of them altogether, and don't even write that as a user bit. If all your cards are saying as a user, stop doing it. Don't even write it. Get into it. They are living documents. And you have to excuse the pun there, because they are personas and they're living people. They're living documents. They're more than just the things that the marketing and product teams produce. I think that we need more details. They need to be more relationship broken down even further. Great starting point up top, breaking down. 33% of your user stories devoted to them. Make sure you give it the attention it deserves. Use them in your tests to reduce that pesticide paradox, and it will increase your quality. The more that you can run that same test for multiple users, your quality is going to go up, because you're going to be hitting all the different use cases a lot more. Yeah, that is it. Time for questions. Oh, and I've got a shout out to myself here. So I've got the example code Catalan file there. So if you are a GitHub user, please go there and you can download this. If you want to get Catalan, you can go here and sign up. I am in the process of creating a persona plugin for Jira Cloud that will allow you to link those up and actually see the little picture in your user story and all that stuff. Some of them already exist, but mine is going to be way better. I can tell you that now. Okay, so that's my own personal plug and the end. But if there's anyone has any questions, I would love to hear them.
So it's a fantastic presentation. One thing that I really enjoy about it is the fact that I've seen a lot of new stuff today that I haven't seen before around personas. So that's something that I've really enjoyed. And also the practical approach that what you've done is you've shown things right down to the actual coding level and on all of the bits and pieces of the specific tools. So that's really good to have that full picture from the concept all the way down to the practical implementation. So I imagine one topic that I had a question around is, did you see that the different layers of persona that you had there in your sort of decomposition hierarchy / network? Do you see that one can use those different layers in different ways? For example, at the lowest layer, using it as the data for running your test, at the top layer, using it for marketing, and then have different uses for the different.
Most definitely. Yeah. Sharing it between all departments so that everyone's talking about the same network of personas, and yeah, definitely using it. And as they update, as the marketing team goes, oh, we've got a new persona, or with this person we've decided is between 50 and 55 now. That sort of flows down and is known throughout the network. Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that I think is missing a lot. Yeah.
So let's throw the floor open to, or throw it open to the floor for questions. Any thoughts that anyone's had on the presentation? We've got silence.
Come
on.
John, I would like to emphasize what you already said. Sorry, I'll just bring my face on. I really like the way Mike presented. I think you've done a wonderful job taking personas and are familiar with it just as a start to get the BAs to write something and showing it end to end, how beautiful that use can be and how everything is being utilized in the different stages. So good on that one. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi, it's Jo. I'm wondering if you've ever had experience of times being spent up front to define the personas, and then through the life of their development, the personas have been forgotten. And then if that's the case, how do you keep the personas alive and part of the dialogue for the team?
Far too often, I think, is the answer. I've seen that far too often, that that they're thought of at the beginning. Oh, cool, these are the people we're going to go for, and then eventually people just start writing that as a user. I think the key is to talk about them often and make it part of everything you're doing. Make it one of the questions you ask when you're working with the three amigos at the beginning of a story, when you've got the developer, tester, and BA together. Who is our persona? Is our persona up to date? Challenge it all the time. Is this the right persona? Do we need another one here? Do we split these out? Really go into it. 33% of your time should be devoted to it. So if you're, I think, challenge it all the time, I would say.
Yeah, cool. Actually, I wonder if we could actually start building in an acceptance criteria around personas, like an acceptance criteria. This story meets blah, blah, blah persona. Just to remember it. I don't know, just thinking that out loud there.
Yeah, I think there's probably something in that. Yeah, there's some question that we can ask, whether it's at the beginning or the end, and I would probably err towards doing it at the beginning, to say, have we got the right persona? Are we talking about the right people? Just that simple question of asking that before you start any work is going to enrich those personas over time.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
So Mike, do you think that there's a possible use case for personas to look at the size of a particular market in a lean startup type environment?
Yeah, I think so, and there is heaps of research. So that automated persona generator, there's some really interesting research going on in that space around, yeah, looking at social media and finding out what are the segmentations out there and bringing that into a nice consumable starting point for you. And then once you've got that, then I think, yeah, you do your research, you find the data, you talk to the marketing team, you talk to the sales team, you talk to all those people, and you go and talk to real customers.
I imagine there's a big crossover between personas and design thinking as well.
Yeah, I would. That's an interesting question. I haven't really seen that explicitly, but there would have to be, because you're designed in for the right people, hopefully. Yeah.
So usually the first stage of design thinking, the empathy stage. If you want to do things like empathy maps, you're going to need to know who your persona is. So, it's there's so many uses for these things. So if you're doing that, it gives you some value. Mike, I want to ask the question. You had that slide that talked about the primary, secondary, and tertiary, and it's something that actually I talk about when we do design thinking. I had two questions on that slide. The first one is, tell us a little more about the facilitators, because one of the anti-patterns I see is people writing stories that say, as a developer, as a product owner, which unless they are actually a user or an actor of the system, doesn't make any sense. So I was wondering why that was on there. The second question I have is, I was always, well, not always, one of the things that I was taught was the primary persona, you want to try and limit that number down very small, because if you can focus on your primary persona, it's kind of the 80-20% rule that then you can then delta to your secondary and then consider your tertiary. What are your thoughts on both those?
Yeah, so the first one, you're absolutely right. You don't want to be seeing stories, as a sequel. I want a sequel so I can sequel. That's not what we're talking about here. What I've put them there for is mostly for that non-functional idea. So thinking about who's going to be getting telemetry data around speed and all those sort of things. So and how do we expose them from the application? So is there specific things that we need in the application that are going to help those facilitator users down the line? Definitely not. As a developer, I want to be able to, I need an API so that it can API, because that's not who we're talking about. And the other part, I think there is a diminishing number as you go down. So that primary user, 80-20 is probably a good idea. So if this is 80, then the next three are going to be your 20 going down. Maybe it's 10, 7, 3, something like that. So yeah, primary is definitely your primary focus.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why you get, as a user, in my experience, is that I'm sure you've had this experience as people go, but we want it to be for everybody, and as a result, then that's why you can never finish a user story. So that persona can be a way of limiting the amount of work, but it also can be a way of making sure that we're not trying to solve this problem for everybody. If other people can get some value, then good luck to them.
Yeah, that's a good call out there. The idea that splitting a big problem down based on personas. Yeah.
And I imagine one of the anti-patterns might be for people that haven't gone out of the waterfall mindset, might have stories like, as a BA, I would like to have a business requirement spec so that I can inform the development team on what to build.
Yep, seen those ones. Cool.
Right. So are there any last minute questions before we close for the evening?
Yeah, if not, yeah, grab the code from there. If you have any trouble with it, let me know. But yeah, it's pretty simple. And just, yeah, good luck with your personas, your creation, and thinking about them from an enterprise point of view. Hopefully that has helped.
Great. I'd like to thank Mike. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that you put in putting this together. It's looks like it's a really original thinking, and something that I've learned a lot from. So thank you so much for the time, and also for presenting to us today. And also to everyone in the group. So thank you so much for coming along to join us this evening. And as Craig mentioned a bit earlier, hopefully we'll see you next week, Friday, at the Lean Coffee.
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
Great
Really,
session.
yeah.
Thank
Cool.
you, everyone.
See you on Friday. Yeah,
Thank you
cheers.
so much.
Thanks so much. Yes, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.